There's a secret hidden in your breakdown, something you can't see while you're drowning in the chaos. While your world is crumbling around you, while everything you built seems to be collapsing into dust, there's an intelligence at work. An ancient force that Marcus Aurelius understood 2,000 years ago. Nothing is falling apart by accident. This is exactly how inner strength is born. Right now, something in your life feels like it's disintegrating. Maybe it's happening slowly, like watching a structure erode piece by piece. Or maybe it happened suddenly, like an earthquake that shattered everything in seconds. Your relationship, your career, your sense of self, your faith in the future. And in the midst of this collapse, you're asking the question everyone asks when their world falls apart. Why is this happening to me? But Marcus Aurelius would tell you that you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't why this is happening. The question is, what is this collapse trying to forge within you? Because nothing in the universe happens randomly. Not in the way you think. Every breakdown carries a blueprint. Every crisis contains a curriculum. Every moment of dissolution is actually a moment of construction. Marcus Aurelius didn't just survive the collapse of everything around him. He understood that the collapse was necessary, that it was purposeful, that without the breaking, there could be no becoming. And today, I'm going to show you what he discovered, that your breakdown isn't a mistake, it's a making, and by the end of this, you'll understand that the force destroying your old life is the same force creating your new one. Introduction. Suave. Before we go deeper into this ancient wisdom, I need to ask something of you. If you found this video in a moment of struggle, if these words are landing on wounds that are still raw, take a second to subscribe to this channel. Leave a like on this video, share it with someone who's going through their own collapse, and comment below, tell me what's falling apart in your life right now. Because this wisdom needs to reach the people who are ready for it, and your engagement ensures it does. Now let's step into the fire together. Let's discover what Marcus Aurelius knew about the hidden purpose behind every collapse. You didn't choose this pain. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to watch your life fall apart. It chose you. It found you. And now you're standing in the ruins of what was, wondering how you're supposed to build anything from the wreckage. This is the human experience at its rawest. We spend our lives constructing identities, building relationships, creating careers, establishing routines, developing certainties. We stack these things carefully, like a child building a tower of blocks, believing that if we're careful enough, if we're good enough, if we're strategic enough, the tower will stand forever. And then one day, without warning or mercy, the tower falls. Maybe your tower fell because someone you loved walked away. Maybe it fell because your body betrayed you with illness. Maybe it fell because the job you dedicated years to suddenly disappeared. Maybe it fell because the version of yourself you worked so hard to become no longer fits who you're growing into. However it happened, you're here now. In the aftermath, in the dust, trying to understand why. Let me tell you about Marcus Aurelius. He was born into privilege, adopted by an emperor, groomed from childhood to rule the greatest empire the world had ever known. By every measure, his life should have been glorious, stable, secure. But the moment he took the throne, everything began to collapse. A plague swept through Rome, killing millions. His northern borders were under constant invasion by barbarian tribes. His treasury was depleted by endless wars. His co-emperor and adopted brother died suddenly, leaving him to rule alone. His wife, whom he loved deeply, may have been unfaithful. And his children, one by one, died. 14 children. Gone, until only one remained, a son who would become one of history's most despised tyrants. Marcus Aurelius watched his entire world fall apart, not gradually, not with warning, but relentlessly, brutally, without pause. And in the midst of this collapse, he did something extraordinary. He didn't rage against the universe. He didn't curse his fate. He didn't ask why this was happening to him. Instead, he sat down and wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." And then he wrote, Everything that happens happens as it should. You will find this to be so if you watch carefully. Read those words again. Everything that happens, happens as it should. Not everything happens for a reason in some cosmic plan, but everything happens according to the nature of things, according to the fundamental laws of existence, according to a pattern so deep, most people never see it. Marcus Aurelius discovered something that transformed his understanding of suffering. He discovered that collapse isn't chaos, it's cosmos. It's order expressing itself in ways that look like disorder to the untrained eye. And once he understood this, once he truly internalized it, his relationship with his suffering completely changed. He stopped fighting the collapse, not because he became passive or resigned, but because he recognized that fighting reality is the only real suffering. The events themselves, the losses, the pain, the endings, these are just the universe doing what the universe does. Everything that comes together must come apart. Everything that rises must fall. Everything that's born must die. This isn't tragedy. This is physics. But here's where it gets profound. Here's where Marcus Aurelius diverged from simple acceptance and discovered something revolutionary. He didn't just accept that things fall apart. He understood that things fall apart for a purpose, not a cosmic purpose assigned by gods or fate, but a functional purpose built into the nature of transformation itself. Think about how a seed becomes a tree. The seed must break open. Its shell must crack. Its form must dissolve. If the seed remained intact, protected, unbroken, it would stay a seed forever. The breaking isn't the tragedy. The breaking is the requirement. The dissolution of the seed's form is what allows the tree's potential to emerge. You are that seed right now, and what's breaking open isn't your destruction, it's your emergence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What doesn't transmit light creates its own darkness." He understood that resistance to change, fighting against the natural dissolution of forms, creates the very suffering we're trying to avoid. But when you stop resisting, when you allow the breaking, when you recognize it as necessary rather than tragic, something shifts. The pain doesn't disappear, but it changes quality. It becomes purposeful pain, meaningful pain, the pain of birth rather than the pain of death. Right now you think something is dying. Your relationship, your career, your identity, your dreams, and yes, in a sense, something is dying. But Marcus Aurelius would tell you that death and birth are the same process viewed from different angles. Every ending is a beginning wearing a disguise. Every collapse is a construction in its early stages. This isn't spiritual bypassing. This isn't pretending your pain doesn't matter. Your pain matters immensely. Feel it. Honor it. Let it move through you completely. But while you're feeling it, understand what it's doing. It's not destroying you. It's dismantling the version of you that was too small for what you're becoming. Marcus Aurelius faced loss that would have broken most people. But he understood something crucial. You can't be broken by something that's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Fire burns, water flows, seeds crack, empires fall, people die, relationships end. And through all of this, something essential remains. Something is being forged. He wrote in his meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Most people read this and think he means you should overcome obstacles. But he's saying something deeper. He's saying the obstacle isn't in your way. The obstacle is the way. The collapse you're experiencing isn't preventing your growth. It is your growth. Everything that's falling apart in your life right now is falling apart because it was meant to be temporary, because it served a purpose for a season, and that season is ending, because you've outgrown it, or it's outgrown you, or the universe is clearing space for something that can't arrive while the old thing remains. Marcus Aurelius didn't just endure his collapses. He studied them. He examined them like a scientist studying a natural process. And what he discovered was that collapse follows patterns. Predictable patterns. Purposeful patterns. And when you understand these patterns, when you can see the intelligence behind the breaking, everything changes. The pattern is this: compression, then expansion. dissolution, then reformation, death, then rebirth, always in that order, always serving the same function. The universe isn't random, it's rhythmic. And your life is following that rhythm right now, even though it feels like chaos. You're in the compression phase, the breaking phase, the dissolving phase. And it hurts because compression hurts. Dissolution hurts. But compression is what creates diamonds from carbon. Dissolution is what turns caterpillars into butterflies. And breaking is what turns who you were into who you're meant to become. Nothing is falling apart by accident. Marcus Aurelius discovered this truth in the midst of unimaginable suffering. And now, 2,000 years later, in the midst of your own suffering, you're discovering it too. Let me show you what's actually happening in your psyche right now. Because when you understand the mechanism, when you can see the architecture of transformation, the process becomes bearable. More than bearable. It becomes meaningful. There's a concept in psychology called disintegration. It sounds negative, like something's going wrong. But in developmental psychology, disintegration is necessary for integration. You can't integrate what you haven't first taken apart. You can't reorganize at a higher level without first dissolving the lower level organization. Think of your psyche like a jigsaw puzzle. For years, maybe decades, you've been assembling the pieces into a picture of who you are, what your life means, how the world works. You've placed each piece carefully, your identity, your relationships, your beliefs, your assumptions, your certainties, and slowly, over time, a complete picture emerged. You looked at that picture and said, "This is me, this is my life." But here's what happens as you grow, as you evolve, as you accumulate experiences that don't fit the picture. The puzzle becomes constraining. The pieces that once fit perfectly start to feel wrong. The picture that once represented you completely now feels like a cage. You've outgrown your own self-image. But you can't see this clearly because you're still attached to the picture you spent so long creating. So the universe, in its infinite intelligence, does something that feels cruel but is actually compassionate. It starts removing pieces. It starts dismantling the puzzle. Not to destroy you, but to free you to create a new picture. A bigger picture. A more accurate picture of who you've become. This is what's happening to you right now. The pieces of your life that are falling away, the structures that are collapsing, these aren't random casualties. They're specific pieces that no longer serve the larger picture trying to emerge. And your psyche knows this at a deep level, even though your conscious mind is terrified. Marcus Aurelius understood this process intimately. He wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are, and to make new things like them." The universe loves to change things, not out of malice but out of function. Because the universe is fundamentally creative. It's constantly dying and being reborn at every level, from stars to cells to identities. And you're not exempt from this process. You're part of it. Let me give you a metaphor that Marcus Aurelius himself used. Think of yourself as a wave in the ocean. When you're a wave, you have a distinct form, a shape, a height, a direction. You can look at other waves and see how you're different. You have an identity. You are this wave, not that wave. But what happens to a wave? Eventually, inevitably, it crashes onto the shore. Its form dissolves. It loses its shape, its height, its distinct identity. From the wave's perspective, this is death. This is the end. This is everything falling apart. But from the ocean's perspective, nothing has ended. The water that formed the wave hasn't disappeared. It's simply returned to the ocean, where it will be formed into new waves, new patterns, new expressions of the same essential substance. You are both the wave and the ocean. Your ego, your personality, your identity, these are the wave. They have form. They have boundaries. They feel separate and distinct. And right now your wave is crashing. Your form is dissolving. And from the perspective of the wave, this is catastrophic. But there's another part of you. The deeper part. The ocean part. The consciousness that exists before form and after form. The essential you that has witnessed every version of yourself you've ever been. That part isn't crashing. That part can't crash. That part is simply watching one form dissolve so another can emerge. Marcus Aurelius spent his life learning to identify with the ocean rather than the wave, to rest in the eternal witness rather than the temporary form. And this is the psychological shift that transforms suffering from unbearable to meaningful. In psychological terms, what you're experiencing is called ego death. Not literal death, but the death of a specific ego structure, a specific way of organizing your identity. And ego death is terrifying because the ego's job is to maintain continuity, to tell a coherent story about who you are across time. When that story starts falling apart, the ego interprets it as literal death. It panics. It fights. It desperately tries to hold on to the old form even though the old form no longer fits. But here's what every wisdom tradition has understood, and what psychology is now confirming. Ego death is the gateway to transformation. You can't become someone new while still being someone old. You can't expand into a larger identity while clinging to a smaller one. The old self must die so the new self can be born. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Death is a release from the impressions of sense, from the puppet strings of impulse, from the analytical mind, and from service to the flesh." He wasn't just talking about physical death. He was talking about the death of identification with temporary forms, the death of believing you are your circumstances, your roles, your relationships, your achievements. When those things fall apart, you feel like you are falling apart. But that's the illusion. The wave is crashing, but the ocean remains. The form is dissolving, but the essence is untouched. And once you can feel this distinction, once you can rest in the part of you that's witnessing the collapse rather than experiencing yourself as the collapse, everything changes. Let me show you another layer of this process. In nature, there's a phenomenon called creative destruction. Forest fires, while devastating to individual trees, are necessary for forest health. They clear dead wood. They release nutrients back into the soil. They crack open seeds that can't germinate any other way. They create space for new growth. Your life is experiencing a fire right now. And yes, things you love are burning. Things you built are turning to ash. But the fire isn't random. It's not targeting you specifically to cause suffering. It's following the same principle that governs all natural systems, periodic destruction that enables renewal. Marcus Aurelius, ruling during plague and war, watched his empire burn in many ways. But he wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." He understood that what looks like destruction from one angle is transformation from another. The fire doesn't destroy matter, it transforms it. Wood becomes heat and light and ash, and that ash becomes nutrients for new growth. What's burning in your life right now isn't being destroyed, it's being transformed. And you're not separate from this transformation, you're the primary subject of it. The fire isn't consuming your life. It's consuming the version of your life that was too small for what's trying to emerge. In Jungian psychology, there's a concept called dismemberment. In ancient initiatory traditions, the initiate would symbolically die and be dismembered, torn apart into pieces. Then those pieces would be reassembled in a new configuration. The initiate who emerged was the same person but organized at a higher level, more integrated, more whole, more conscious. You're going through a dismemberment right now. It's not symbolic, it's real. The pieces of your life, your identity, your certainties, they're being torn apart. And it feels like chaos, it feels like death. But initiatory traditions understood something crucial. You can't become whole without first being broken apart. True integration requires disintegration first. Marcus Aurelius went through his own dismemberment. Every loss, every betrayal, every failure was removing a piece of who he thought he was. But instead of fighting the process, he studied it, he observed it, he wrote about it. And through that observation, he discovered the pattern, the purpose, the intelligence behind the breaking. He wrote, "The universe is transformation, life is opinion. The events themselves are neutral. They're just transformation, the universe doing what it does. But your opinion about those events, your interpretation, your story, That's where suffering or wisdom emerges. And you get to choose which. Right now, you're probably telling yourself a story about your collapse. A story about what it means, about what's wrong, about what you lost, about what you'll never have. And that story is creating most of your suffering, not the events themselves, but your interpretation of them. Marcus Aurelius is inviting you to change the story, not to a positive story that denies reality, but to a truer story. A story that recognizes what's actually happening. You're not falling apart. You're being deconstructed so you can be reconstructed. You're not losing yourself. You're losing the limited version of yourself so a larger version can emerge. And this process, this ancient pattern of death and rebirth, dissolution and reformation, breaking and becoming, this isn't happening to punish you. It's happening to forge you, because this is how inner strength is born. Now we arrive at the transformation itself, the actual process of turning collapse into construction, because understanding the theory is beautiful, but living the transformation is what changes you forever. Marcus Aurelius didn't just philosophize about transformation, he lived it. Every single day, in the midst of wars and plagues and personal losses, he practiced specific internal disciplines that allowed him to transform suffering into strength. And I'm going to teach you those disciplines now, adapted for your life, for your collapse, for this moment. The first discipline is what Marcus Aurelius called the view of the whole. When you're in the middle of collapse, your entire world shrinks to the crisis. All you can see is what's falling apart. All you can feel is the pain. Your vision becomes tunnel vision, focused entirely on the wound. But Marcus Aurelius practiced deliberately expanding his perspective, not to minimize his pain but to contextualize it. He would imagine his life from above, seeing himself as one small part of a vast empire. Then he'd expand further, seeing Rome as one small part of Earth, then Earth as one small part of the cosmos. And from that cosmic perspective, his personal suffering, while still real, became part of a much larger pattern. You can practice this right now. Whatever is falling apart in your life, imagine you're watching it from high above. See yourself in your current situation as if you're watching a character in a much longer story. What do you notice from that perspective? Can you see how this moment, as painful as it is, might be a necessary chapter? Can you sense that the story isn't over, that this is a middle, not an ending? This isn't about making your pain seem small or insignificant. It's about remembering that you're part of something larger, that your life is a process unfolding over time, that this collapse is one movement in a longer dance. The second discipline is what I call befriending the destroyer. This might sound strange, but stay with me. There's a part of you right now that's being destroyed. Your old identity, your old certainties, your old life. And there's a force doing the destroying. Maybe it's circumstances, maybe it's another person's choices, maybe it's time itself. Most people relate to this destroying force as an enemy. They fight it, they resist it, they curse it. But Marcus Aurelius discovered something revolutionary. The force that destroys is the same force that creates. They're not opposites. They're two faces of the same process. In Hindu philosophy, there's a deity called Shiva. Shiva is known as the destroyer. But Shiva doesn't destroy out of malice. Shiva destroys to make space for creation. And Shiva is often depicted dancing, because destruction is part of the cosmic dance, rhythmic and purposeful. What if you stopped fighting the destroying force and started dancing with it? What if you recognized that what's being destroyed needs to be destroyed, that it's making space for something that can't emerge while the old thing remains? Practice this. Sit quietly and visualize whatever is falling apart in your life. Your relationship, your career, your health, your identity. See it clearly. Then visualize a force, however you imagine it, dismantling it, breaking it down, dissolving it, and instead of fighting this visualization, thank it. Actually say out loud or silently, "Thank you for destroying what no longer serves me. Thank you for making space for what I'm becoming." This practice isn't about being grateful for pain. It's about recognizing the purpose within the pain. It's about cooperating with the transformation instead of fighting it. And when you stop fighting, when you start cooperating, the process becomes so much easier. The third discipline Marcus Aurelius practiced was voluntary diminishment. This seems counterintuitive. Why would you voluntarily diminish yourself when life is already stripping things away? But here's the wisdom. When you voluntarily let go of things, when you practice non-attachment in small ways, you train yourself for the big collapses. Marcus Aurelius would regularly give away possessions, fast, sleep on hard ground, expose himself to discomfort, not because he was punishing himself, but because he was practicing. He was teaching his mind. My well-being doesn't depend on external conditions. I can be at peace with less. I can be strong in discomfort. You can practice this too, not in extreme ways, but in small, manageable ways. Give away something you're attached to. Fast for a day. Take a cold shower. Sit in silence instead of reaching for your phone. Spend time alone instead of desperately seeking distraction. Each small practice builds your capacity for the large transformation. Each voluntary letting go trains you to handle involuntary loss. You're teaching yourself viscerally that you can survive diminishment, that you're more than what you own, more than your comfort, more than your circumstances. The fourth discipline, and perhaps the most transformative, is what Marcus Aurelius called the reserve clause. Every time he made a plan, every time he hoped for something, every time he set an intention, he would add a mental clause. If nothing prevents it, or if it serves the greater good, or if the universe allows it. This wasn't pessimism, it was radical flexibility. He was building non-attachment into his very thinking. He was pre-accepting that his plans might not work out, that his hopes might not materialize, that his intentions might be redirected, and by pre-accepting this, he was never devastated when it happened. You can practice this immediately. Every time you plan something, every time you hope for something, every time you decide you want something, add the reserve clause. I desire this, but I accept that it might not happen. And if it doesn't, I trust that something more aligned is taking its place. This transforms your relationship with disappointment, because disappointment only happens when reality violates your fixed expectations. But if your expectations are held lightly, with the reserve clause built in, reality can't disappoint you. It can only redirect you. The fifth discipline is what I call mining the collapse. Marcus Aurelius didn't just endure his suffering. He mined it. He examined it. He extracted wisdom from it. Every loss taught him something. Every betrayal revealed something. Every failure showed him something. His meditations are literally the written record of him mining his collapses for gold. You can do this too. Right now, in the midst of your collapse, start mining. Get a journal. Write these questions and answer them honestly. What is this collapse revealing about me that I couldn't see before? Maybe it's revealing how much you've been living for others' approval. Maybe it's showing you that you've built your identity on something temporary. Maybe it's exposing fears you've been running from. What strength is this collapse forcing me to develop? Maybe it's forcing you to learn self-reliance. Maybe it's teaching you to sit with discomfort. Maybe it's developing your capacity for uncertainty. What was unsustainable about my old life that this collapse is ending? Maybe your relationship was draining you. Maybe your career was misaligned with your values. Maybe your lifestyle was burning you out. What is trying to emerge through this collapse? This is the hardest question, but the most important. There's something new trying to be born. A new version of you. A new life direction. A new understanding. What is it? You might not know clearly yet, but you can sense it. Trust that sense. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle is the path," but he also showed us how to walk that path, not by avoiding the obstacle, not by trying to go around it, but by going through it with eyes open, with curiosity, with the willingness to be transformed by it. Every discipline I've given you is a tool for conscious transformation, for cooperating with the collapse instead of being destroyed by it, for participating in your own rebirth instead of being passively traumatized by your death. And here's what Marcus Aurelius discovered through his practice. When you stop resisting the transformation, when you start cooperating with it, something magical happens. The pain doesn't disappear, but it changes quality. It stops being meaningless suffering and becomes purposeful growing pains. The labor pains of your new self being born. You're in labor right now, and labor hurts. But you're not dying. You're birthing. And every contraction, every wave of pain is bringing you closer to emergence, to the moment when you'll look back and realize that nothing was falling apart by accident. It was all exactly how inner strength is born. Now I want to reveal something about Marcus Aurelius that most people miss. Something hidden in his writings that completely changes how you understand your own collapse. Because Marcus Aurelius wasn't just describing how to endure suffering. He was describing the universe's method of creating consciousness. There's a passage in his meditations that seems abstract at first, but contains a revolutionary idea. He wrote, "Everything is interwoven, and the web is holy. None of its parts are unconnected. They are composed harmoniously, and together they compose the world." What is he saying? He's saying that everything in existence is connected by invisible threads. Every event is linked to every other event. Every person's life touches every other person's life. Nothing happens in isolation. Nothing is random. Everything is part of a cosmic web of cause and effect, and that web is intelligent, holy, purposeful. Now apply this to your collapse. What you're experiencing right now isn't an isolated tragedy. It's a node in the web, a point where multiple threads intersect. Your loss is connected to your growth. Your ending is connected to someone else's beginning. Your collapse is connected to a larger pattern of transformation that extends far beyond your individual life. Marcus Aurelius understood something that quantum physics is now confirming. The universe is fundamentally interconnected. There are no separate events, no isolated causes. Everything affects everything else. And when you understand this, when you feel it, your collapse stops being about you and starts being about something larger. He wrote in another passage, "How ridiculous and strange to be surprised at anything that happens in life." Think about this. He's saying that surprise at suffering is itself a form of ignorance. Because if you understood the nature of existence, if you understood how things actually work, you would expect that everything eventually dissolves, transforms, and reforms. You would be surprised by permanence, not by change. This isn't cynicism. This is a profound reorientation to reality. Most of us live with the unconscious assumption that things should stay the same, that what we build should last, that what we love should remain. But that's not how reality works. Reality is flux, constant flux, and our suffering comes not from the flux, but from our expectation of stability within the flux. Marcus Aurelius spent his life training himself to expect change, to normalize loss, to see endings as natural rather than tragic. And this training didn't make him cold or detached. It made him present. It freed him to love deeply without clinging desperately, to build meaningfully without attaching his identity to what he built, to live fully while holding everything lightly. There's another hidden teaching in his work. He wrote, "The universe is either a confusion of atoms randomly colliding or it's unity, order, and providence. If it's random chaos, why do you want to remain in such a meaningless dispersal? But if it's unity and order, I am in awe, and I will rest in the power that governs all." This is a choice he's presenting you. You can interpret your collapse as random chaos, meaningless suffering, cruel fate. Or you can interpret it as part of an ordered process, a transformative pattern, intelligent restructuring. And here's the key. Whichever interpretation you choose becomes your reality, not because it changes the external events, but because it changes your internal experience of them. If you choose to see your collapse as random chaos, you'll experience it as victimization. You'll feel powerless, bitter, traumatized. The pain will be compounded by meaninglessness. But if you choose to see your collapse as ordered transformation, as the universe doing what it must to forge you into something stronger, you'll experience it as initiation. You'll feel challenged, but not destroyed, tested, but not abandoned. The pain will still be real, but it will be purposeful pain. the pain of growth rather than the pain of meaninglessness. Marcus Aurelius chose the second interpretation, not because he had proof, but because he recognized it was the only interpretation that allowed him to remain whole. And 2,000 years later, you have the same choice. Here's another hidden teaching. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about living in accordance with nature. Most people interpret this as living simply or environmentally. But that's not what he meant. He meant aligning yourself with the fundamental laws of existence, understanding how things actually work, then cooperating with that instead of fighting it. And what is the fundamental law of nature? Everything that comes into form eventually leaves form. Everything born dies. Everything that rises falls. Everything that gathers disperses. This is entropy. This is thermodynamics. This is the basic operating system of physical reality. When your life falls apart, you're not experiencing an aberration. You're experiencing nature. You're experiencing entropy. You're experiencing the universe doing exactly what the universe does. And living in accordance with nature means accepting this, cooperating with it, even finding peace within it. He wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." Do you see what he's doing? He's saying, yes, everything is temporary. Yes, you'll lose what you love. Yes, nothing lasts. But that's not a reason to withhold yourself. It's a reason to give yourself fully, knowing that the temporary nature of things makes them more precious, not less. Your collapse is teaching you this right now. You're learning that nothing you can hold will last. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't hold anything. It means you should hold everything with reverence for its temporary nature. Love deeply, knowing you'll lose. Build meaningfully, knowing it won't last. Invest fully, knowing it will end. Because the temporary nature of things isn't their weakness, it's their beauty. Marcus Aurelius had one more hidden teaching that's crucial for understanding your collapse. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This seems morbid at first. Why contemplate death while you're already suffering? But he's not being morbid. He's pointing to liberation. He's saying, if you could die at any moment, if this current collapse could be your last experience, how would that change how you're meeting it? Would you waste energy on resentment? Would you burn time on self-pity? Would you spend your final moments fighting reality? Or would you take a breath, look around, feel your aliveness despite everything and choose to be present for the transformation? Would you find the courage to let go of what's ending and turn toward what's beginning? Would you discover dignity in the midst of dissolution? This is what Marcus Aurelius is offering you. Not comfort, not rescue, but dignity. The dignity of meeting your collapse consciously, of participating in your transformation rather than being passively destroyed by it, of choosing to see the purpose in the pain, even when the purpose isn't yet clear. He wrote toward the end of his life, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." After everything he'd lost, everything that had fallen apart, everything that had collapsed around him, he found that the only thing that couldn't be taken was his inner state, his consciousness, his essential self. And that's still there in you, underneath your collapse, undiminished by your losses, untouched by your suffering. The part of you that's reading these words right now, the awareness that's present for your pain, that consciousness can't be destroyed by anything happening to you. It's the one constant in a world of change. Marcus Aurelius discovered this. And now, through your collapse, you're discovering it too. Nothing is falling apart by accident. This is exactly, precisely, perfectly how inner strength is born. Now let's bring this ancient wisdom into your actual life right now, today, in the specific chaos you're living through. Because beautiful philosophy is meaningless if you can't apply it when you're drowning. So I'm going to give you a practical framework for living through your collapse with consciousness and dignity. First, let's address where you probably are emotionally. You wake up in the morning and for a split second, everything's normal. Then reality crashes back. The relationship is still over. The job is still gone, the diagnosis is still real, the loss is still present, and that moment, that transition from sleep to waking consciousness of your pain, that moment is brutal. Marcus Aurelius faced this same moment every morning. And here's what he did. He would spend the first few minutes of his day preparing himself mentally for difficulty, not catastrophizing, but steeling himself, reminding himself of truth. You can do this too. Before you even get out of bed, before you check your phone, before you face the day, spend 3 minutes in what I call conscious preparation. Say to yourself, either mentally or out loud, today I'm living in the middle of transformation. Some moments will hurt. Some moments will feel overwhelming. And I'm strong enough for all of it. I've survived every difficult day of my life so far. Today will be no different. You're not pretending everything's fine. You're acknowledging reality while reminding yourself of your capacity to meet it. This simple practice changes how you enter the day. You're no longer bracing against pain and fear. You're preparing for pain with dignity. Second, throughout your day, you'll have moments when the collapse feels unbearable, when the grief hits, when the anxiety spikes, when the what-ifs spiral out of control. In these moments, Marcus Aurelius practiced what he called retreat to the citadel. He would mentally withdraw to his inner fortress, the part of himself that couldn't be invaded by circumstances. Here's how you do it. The moment you feel yourself spiraling, stop whatever you're doing if you can. Close your eyes. Take 3 slow breaths. Then say this internally. I am not my circumstances. I am the awareness witnessing my circumstances. My circumstances are changing. My essence is unchanged. Then place your hand on your chest and feel your heartbeat. Feel your breath. Feel your aliveness. This is the citadel. This present moment awareness of being alive. No matter what's falling apart, this remains. You remain. Practice this 10 times a day if you need to, 20 times, 100 times. Every time you retreat to the citadel, you strengthen it. You train yourself to identify with consciousness rather than circumstances, and that training is what will carry you through. Third, you need a daily practice of mining your collapse that we discussed earlier. But let me give you the specific structure. Every evening before you go to sleep, journal for just 5 minutes. Answer these 3 questions. What did my collapse teach me today? Maybe it taught you that you're stronger than you thought. Maybe it taught you that you can sit with discomfort. Maybe it taught you who your real friends are. There's always a teaching. Find it. Where did I resist today and what happened? Be honest. Where did you fight reality? Where did you wish things were different? Where did you create suffering through resistance and what was the result? This isn't about judgment. It's about observation. Resistance creates suffering. Acceptance creates peace. Notice the pattern. What am I grateful for despite everything? This is crucial. In the midst of collapse, your mind will focus on what's wrong, what's missing, what's lost. Gratitude is the practice of redirecting your attention to what remains, what's still working, what's still beautiful. Maybe it's just breath. Maybe it's just this day being over. Maybe it's one person who showed up for you. Find something. Feel it. Let it balance the pain. Fourth, you need to practice what Marcus Aurelius called negative visualization, but in a specific way. Once a day, for just 2 minutes, imagine your collapse continuing. Imagine things getting worse before they get better. Imagine the worst-case scenario. Why would you do this? Because your mind is already imagining it, but unconsciously, which creates background anxiety. When you consciously, deliberately imagine the worst, several things happen. You realize you can survive even imagining it, which means you could survive experiencing it. You rob the future of its power to terrorize you. And you often realize the worst case isn't as catastrophic as your unconscious fears make it seem. After you visualize the worst for 2 minutes, spend 1 minute visualizing yourself handling it. See yourself 5 years from now, having survived and grown through this. See yourself telling someone younger about this time and how it forged you. See yourself transformed by this, not destroyed by it. Fifth, and this is critical, you need to create what I call collapse companions. These are specific practices, objects, or rituals that become associated with your transformation that you can turn to when you're struggling. For Marcus Aurelius, it was writing. His meditations were his collapse companion. Every time he felt overwhelmed, he would write. He would remind himself of truth. He would counsel himself. He would extract wisdom from his pain. Your collapse companion might be different. Maybe it's walking. Maybe it's a specific piece of music that helps you feel your feelings. Maybe it's a stone you carry in your pocket that reminds you of your strength. Maybe it's a phrase you repeat. This too is transformation. Maybe it's calling a specific friend who understands. Whatever it is, designate it consciously as your companion. Make it sacred. Associate it with your transformation, so that every time you turn to it, you're not just soothing yourself, you're affirming, I'm in the middle of becoming something new. Sixth, Marcus Aurelius practiced regular widening of perspective. He would deliberately think about people suffering more than him, not to minimize his pain, but to contextualize it, to remember he wasn't alone, to feel part of the human family of suffering. You can do this too. Once a day, deliberately think. Right now, in this moment, millions of people are going through their own collapse. I'm part of an ancient pattern of transformation that every human eventually experiences. I'm not isolated in my pain. I'm part of the human experience of growth through difficulty. This isn't about comparing suffering or feeling guilty for your pain. It's about remembering you're not alone. You're not being singled out. You're not the only one. This is what humans go through. This is how we grow. And you're doing it right now, along with millions of others. Seventh, practice voluntary simplicity during your collapse. When everything is falling apart, your life gets complicated. Your mind gets chaotic. Your emotions get overwhelming. Counter this by deliberately simplifying everything you can control. Simplify your schedule. Say no to unnecessary commitments. Simplify your environment. Clear the clutter. Simplify your diet. Eat simple, nourishing food. Simplify your digital life. Reduce screen time. Simplify your social life. Spend time only with people who truly nourish you. Marcus Aurelius practiced this rigorously. Even as emperor, he simplified. He slept on simple beds, ate simple food, wore simple clothes, not because he couldn't afford luxury, but because simplicity created space for wisdom. Complexity creates distraction. Simplicity creates clarity. Eighth, and finally, practice what I call transition rituals. Your collapse is a transition from one life to another, from one identity to another, from one chapter to another. Honor this transition with ritual. Create a morning ritual that marks the beginning of each day of transformation. Maybe it's lighting a candle. Maybe it's sitting in silence. Maybe it's reading something wise. The content doesn't matter. The consistency does. You're telling yourself, I'm conscious of this transition. I'm honoring this process. I'm showing up for my own transformation. Create an evening ritual that marks the end of each day. Maybe it's the journaling we discussed. Maybe it's a gratitude practice. Maybe it's simply saying, I survived today. I grew today. I'm proud of myself today. Marcus Aurelius lived by rituals, morning meditation, evening reflection, regular writing. These weren't just habits. They were sacred practices that kept him connected to his transformation, that reminded him daily of who he was becoming through his suffering. You're not just surviving your collapse. You're being initiated into a new level of consciousness, a new depth of strength, a new version of yourself. And these practices are your initiation rituals, the daily disciplines that transform random suffering into purposeful transformation. Do them. Practice them. Make them yours, because nothing is falling apart by accident. And every practice you do is proof that you understand what Marcus Aurelius understood. This is exactly how inner strength is born. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine it's 10 years from now. You're sitting somewhere beautiful, somewhere peaceful, and someone younger than you, Someone just beginning their own collapse comes to you with desperate eyes and asks, "How did you survive? How did you make it through?" And you look at them with compassion, with wisdom earned through suffering, and you tell them the truth. You tell them that you didn't just survive, you were transformed. You tell them that what felt like the end was actually the beginning, that what looked like destruction was actually construction, that every piece that fell away made space for something more real, more aligned, more true. You tell them that the person you were before the collapse couldn't have lived the life you're living now, that the breaking was necessary, that the pain was purposeful, that nothing happened by accident, that everything, every loss, every ending, every moment of dissolution was exactly how your strength was born. And as you say these words to them, you realize you're not trying to convince them. You're simply telling them what you now know to be true, that Marcus Aurelius was right, that the universe's intelligence is real, that collapse is how consciousness grows, that breaking is how strength emerges. Right now you can't see this. You're too close to the pain, too deep in the chaos. But the person you're becoming, the one who will sit in that peaceful place 10 years from now, that person is being forged right now, in this collapse, in this pain, in this moment. Every time you choose consciousness over reaction, you're forging that person. Every time you practice one of the disciplines we discussed, you're becoming that person. Every time you find meaning in the pain, dignity in the suffering, purpose in the collapse, you're stepping into that person. You are not being destroyed. You are being rebuilt. At the cellular level, at the psychological level, at the soul level, old patterns are dissolving. Old identities are releasing. Old limitations are crumbling. And what's being revealed, what's emerging from beneath the rubble, is something far more authentic, far more powerful, far more real than what was there before. Marcus Aurelius went through this. He lost everything that could be lost, and yet he became one of history's most influential philosophers, not despite his suffering, but through it. His wisdom was earned in the fire. His strength was forged in the collapse. His consciousness was born in the pain. And now you're walking the same path, not because you chose it, but because the universe chose it for you. Because this is your initiation. This is your forging. This is your becoming. Feel the weight of this moment. Not the weight of suffering, but the weight of significance. You're not just going through something difficult. You're going through something transformative. Something that will define who you become. Something that future you will look back on with awe, with gratitude, with the recognition that this was when everything changed. Nothing is falling apart by accident. The intelligence that spins galaxies, that orchestrates seasons, that grows trees from seeds, that intelligence is working through your collapse right now, reorganizing you, restructuring you, preparing you for a life your current self can't even imagine yet. Trust it, even when you can't see it. Even when it hurts, even when it feels like too much. Trust that this is exactly what needs to happen. Exactly how it needs to happen. Exactly when it needs to happen. You are being forged, right now, in this fire. And what emerges will be stronger than anything that could have existed without the breaking. Marcus Aurelius wrote these words near the end of his life, after everything he'd endured, after everything that had fallen apart. Confine yourself to the present. If you can do that, you can endure anything. This moment. Right now. This is all you have to survive, not tomorrow, not next week, not the rest of your life, just this moment. And this moment you're handling, you're breathing, you're here, you're conscious. You're present for your own transformation. That's enough. That's everything. You don't need to know how this ends. You don't need to see the full picture yet. You don't need to understand the purpose completely. You just need to be here, now, conscious and willing, and that's exactly what you're doing. So let me leave you with this. Nothing in your life is falling apart by accident. Every ending is making space for a beginning. Every loss is revealing what can't be lost. Every moment of dissolution is a moment of reconstruction. This is not happening to you, this is happening for you, through you, as you. This is how inner strength is born, not in comfort, not in certainty, not in stability, but in moments exactly like this, when everything is falling apart and you choose to remain conscious, to remain present, to remain open to transformation. You're doing it right now. You're becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone more real. And one day, you'll look back at this moment with gratitude, with awe, with the recognition that this was when you were forged. Thank you for being here, for doing this work, for having the courage to transform consciously instead of being destroyed unconsciously. If this video resonated with you, share it with someone going through their own collapse. Leave a comment and tell me what's falling apart for you. Let's witness each other's transformations. And remember, you are not alone. Marcus Aurelius walked this path. Millions before you have walked it. Millions are walking it right now. And you're walking it with consciousness, with dignity, with the understanding that this is sacred work. This is exactly how inner strength is born. And you're being born right now.